What's up, sons? It's Blind Run with Son of a Tech, and I finally got my hands on an MSI RX 480 GamingX edition, and yes, that's 8 gigabytes. How does it perform? Stick around to find out. So, here it is, the beautiful MSI RX 480 GamingX edition. I've tested two other trims of this card, actually on the nvidia side for the GTX 1070 and the GTX 1080. In both of those cases, they proved to be the best trim of the card I've tested so far. And I wanted to see if this would continue on the AMD side of things, so I had to pick it up, and I finally was able to. Taking a look at it right away, we see that it does have the Twin Frozer 6 cooling design, which is double ball bearing fans and 8mm copper heat pipes. It's one of the few cards that is still having those big ass heat pipes pop outside of the shroud. Whether you're into that sort of thing or not is up to you. I personally don't like it. I also don't like that they made it fucking red, and so everything has to be red in that color scheme. But for the AMD side of things, it's not that bad because typically you're going with that red color scheme anyways, especially if you're on the RTP there. It comes dressed with both a backplate and a midplate that are black. On the backplate you have an MSI logo and the MSI Dragon, which could be your thing or could not be your thing, I don't know. On the outside of the card we also see two DisplayPort 1.4 ports, two HDMI 2.0B ports, and one DVI. You'll notice that there is one DisplayPort missing from the reference card, but they added an HDMI port because of the push for VR and how big AMD is into the VR market right now. Moving around the card, you also find an 8-pin power adapter, which is similar to other non-reference designs, adding 2 extra pins to that power adapter from the reference being 6. However, there is a difference here. Instead of the other trims of this card, for example the Sapphire, it actually comes with 8 power phases instead of the 6+1 power phase. This actually translates kind of interestingly into the power draw, which goes way up from that 225 range all the way to about 336 at peak power. And this was confirmed not only by the Kilowatt but also by Tech Power Up's GPU-Z. Because of this, we have to be concerned about cooling, right? More power usually means that the cooling needs to be better. Well, I gotta give it to them. The cooling on the MSI GamingX edition of this card is better than any cooling that I've tested on any RX 480. During testing on stock fan profiles, because I always try to get the highest temperatures on what you'll get out of the box, with overclock on, we saw 74 degree peak, which is 10 degrees cooler than the Sapphire RX 480 8GB Nitro Plus. Pretty impressive stuff here. I gotta say, as ugly as the damn thing is, it just works. So we mentioned that we overclocked and we mentioned that we bumped the voltage up. The voltage was bumped plus 96 millivolts, putting it up past the 1.2 mark, and it was fine with temperatures. So we went ahead and left it there and tried to achieve the highest overclock. The max attainable overclock in synthetic benchmarks for 3D Mark was 1455 megahertz. However, with extensive testing that I do and all of the games that I tested in, we ended up knocking down to a max stable overclock of 1415 megahertz. During this time, the fan speeds only ever got up to 2,394 RPMs, while on the RX 480 Nitro Plus from Sapphire, which was only showing 40% fan usage, was at 3,144 RPMs. A note here is that the MSI version at this rate was running at 77% fan speed, so even if you knocked it up to 100%, we'd probably still be below the rotations per minute the RX 480 Nitro Plus uses. Pretty interesting stuff. So that's all well and good. You guys know the overclocks that we had there, and we need to get into the benchmarks. What did we score here? Well, we're going to start off with the synthetic benchmarks like I always do, and in TimeSpy on default settings, the MSI GamingX scored 4,554 compared to the Nitro Plus, which was in the 4,300s. That's pretty impressive stuff that you're getting out of that overclock. In Firestrike, the GamingX continued to beat out the Nitro Plus with a score of 14,302. This is getting interesting. Let's move on to real-world benchmarks here. In Rise of the Tomb Raider on very high with SSAA ×4, the min frame rate stayed at 29 FPS, almost hitting that 30 FPS mark we like to see. On average, it had 45.62 frames per second with a max of 90 frames per second across the board, just wiping the floor with the Nitro Plus, thanks to the overclock, which is thanks to the fantastic cooling, which is also in part thanks to the power design. On Forza Horizon 3 with the dynamic medium preset, the min frame rate was 61.28, while the average was 96 and the max was 119. Are you guys noticing a trend here? Total War Warhammer Ultra preset, the GamingX scored a min of 79 frames per second with an average of 88 FPS and a max of 92. In Deus Ex Mankind Divided on the Ultra preset, the min frame rate was 39.8 FPS with an average of 49.7 and a max of 63.4. If you guys haven't noticed yet here, it's all about those min frame rates, and what we're seeing is that the card is not being throttled at all, and so we're not having those dips that we see with the Nitro Plus. And keep in mind, this is on stock fan profiles, so you could alter this on the Nitro Plus, but it's good for comparison to show you guys what you're getting right out of the box. In Gears of War 4 at 1080p Ultra with async on and tiled resources on, the time between frames is 11.6, so right on par and the same as the Nitro Plus. However, here's where we see the difference again. The min frame rate is 72.3 FPS, beating out the Sapphire RX 480 8GB Nitro Plus by quite a lot, 14 FPS. The average was 91.8 FPS, once again beating out the Nitro Plus as well. So in conclusion, by no means am I saying that the Sapphire RX 480 Nitro Plus is a bad card. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is that all my testing is done with stock fan profiles that they send from the factory. Now you could turn those fan profiles up and you'd probably get similar or better numbers, maybe depending on how you tweaked it, than you see here on the RX GamingX edition. However, keep in mind that the max speed of the fan during the tests was significantly lower on the RX 480 GamingX edition than the Nitro Plus. This is important because you are going to have lower noise in your case. You're going to have to adjust the fan profiles less and they spin less, which means that you are going to also extend the longevity of the ball bearings within the fans. And the temps at these rates are significantly lower on the GamingX, staying around 74 Celsius, while on the Nitro Plus, at a higher speed on the fan, is hitting 84 Celsius. I hope you guys got the comparison you were looking for and all the information you needed to make a solid purchase here on an RX 480, if that's what you're looking at. If you're looking for a GTX 1060, check out some of my reviews on those. I'll leave some links up here and down in the description below. And if you want any more details, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Tuesday.